Good morning, evening, or night, everybody. I'm Jax, and in this video, we are going to be going over and discussing a very hot topic of the moment. Splatoon 3 and the worry surrounding the game. I'm going to give some background as to why this is a hot topic for those that are out of the loop, a recap of what we've seen from the game to get a baseline, and why some people might be worried about it. So let's super jump into it. For those of you that are out of the loop, a decent amount of Splatoon and Nintendo fans in general, at least the vocal ones, are kind of concerned about Splatoon 3. Some people worry that the game is just too similar to the previous one, with some discourse that the games are becoming like Call of Duty. Some concerned that the game hasn't had strong marketing and thus won't sell well. Some worried that the game just doesn't have that it factor, as well as a multitude of other reasons. The discussion of worry has grown rather restless over the past few months, and at least right now is reaching a greater level of anxiety as the game grows closer. An article released on August 1st from Nintendo Life, spurred by a video from popular Nintendo creator and blue puppet extraordinaire Arlo, have ignited more fervent debate about the topic. I'll link both Arlo's video and the Nintendo Life article in the description if you want to check those out to give you more context. So that's essentially why this topic is relevant, at least right now. But let's get into what exactly we've seen about Splatoon 3 to give us a baseline to judge whether or not we should be worried. In total, Splatoon 3 has received 4 trailers since its reveal back on February 17th, 2021, over a year ago. The game has had no Testfire or Direct as of the launch of this video, but it has received over 120 tweets about it from the Splatoon North America and Nintendo of America Twitter accounts, detailing everything from weapons to brands to gear to maps to modes and more. It's easier to name all that we've seen than try to go over what we haven't, but I'll cover some major stuff that we have not seen to give you a fair balance. We haven't seen if there are any new idols for the game, whether the gear system is getting changed or overhauled, the scope and length of the single-player campaign, if there are any changes to rank battles, additional modes, or changes to the ranking system, any long-term commitments to the competitive side of the game, any information about the DLC structure of the game, whether it be paid or otherwise, and also no mention of any amiibo support, which is minor, but since it's been present in the first 2 games, I thought I'd mention it here as well. So now to the ultimate question. Should you, and the collective fan base, be worried about Splatoon 3? Well, the answer's kind of complicated. As a start, I would say no, be cautious, but not worried. I'll explain why. First things first is that we have seen consistent information about the game. However important or meaningful you deem that information is subjective, but we have seen consistent information indicating that the game is at least in the minds of someone at Nintendo and their marketing department consistently. Second is that Nintendo did have other large releases to market before Splatoon 3, namely Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which just released this past week. Marketing 2 blockbuster first-party titles simultaneously is generally not a great marketing strategy, as it clogs communication channels, confuses consumers, and overall makes Nintendo's social media seem messy and congested. On top of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, since the reveal of Splatoon 3 back in February of 2021, Nintendo has promoted, announced, teased, and/or released a boatload of stuff. I'll give you just a taste. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pack Waves 1 and 2, Bayonetta 3, Digimon Survive, the Minecraft Steve Amiibo, Fire Emblem 3 Hopes, Nintendo Switch Sports and a myriad of updates to it, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Live Alive, Mario Strikers Battle League, Pokemon Unite updates, Project Triangle Strategy, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Kirby's Dream Buffet, a Metroid Dread update, a Pikmin Bloom update, Breath of the Wild's launch delay update, Rune Factory 5, Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Legends Arceus Daybreak update, the Min Min Amiibo, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Bravely Default 2, a Xenoblade 3 Direct, 2 Pokemon Directs, an Animal Crossing Theme Direct, a Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, a Nintendo Direct Indie World Showcase, 3 Nintendo Directs, 2 Smash Ultimate Tournaments, 4 or 5 Mario Kart 8 tournaments and 7 or 8 Splatoon 2 tournaments. And that's far from everything. That's just what I could gather scrolling through Nintendo's Twitter for 30 minutes. Nintendo have had to market a lot of stuff since Splatoon 3 was announced. This whole situation very well could be an issue of, well, we'll just wait until our more recent big game is done and released, and then we'll move on to the next one, and then the next one. And Splatoon has just been getting pushed back. Since Nintendo has no major game releases in the month of August, it makes sense for them to aggressively market Splatoon 3 this month, but they also have Bayonetta 3 releasing at the end of September, and Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet in November, as well as some surprise releases that we don't know about, and gearing up for what probably will be a direct sometime this fall. So it won't all purely be Splatoon 3 in August anyway. Thirdly, Splatoon 3 will sell a lot to its core audience. I know a ton of people that are going to buy this game the second it drops. It has enough improvements, changes, and new things to keep all the hardcore fans engaged and chomping at the bit to play it. But here is where the caution, and also people like Arlo, come into play. To a casual player, maybe somebody who dipped their toes into Splatoon 2 and is thinking about buying Splatoon 3, or somebody who is looking at it as their introduction to the series, Splatoon 3 might not seem like that big of a deal. Arlo's video is great, as it is a non-diehard Splatoon fan who still likes and appreciates the series, expressing his concerns about it. He makes a good point. Is more Splatoon enough? Is it enough to sell 10 million copies? I don't know. Has it set itself apart enough from its predecessor to seem warranted in the eyes of a non-diehard fan? To some, yeah, and to some, no. To some people, it seems like more of the same, thus the Call of Duty comparisons. It might seem like a quick cash grab of a game with a new coat of paint, pun definitely intended, slapped on it. Diehard fans will disagree with this. But to some, like Arlo said, it doesn't have that wow or that it factor, at least what's been shown to us. To some, why would they buy Splatoon 3, which won't even have everything at launch, for $60 when they can just buy Splatoon 2, a complete full game with a great DLC expansion, and they could probably get it at a discount. It still has a large active player base, and will probably still have a decent player base when Splatoon 3 launches, and tons of content already made for it. And all those hypothetical people, and probably real opinions, have some points. For the die-hard Splatoon fan, the love of the series can blind them to the flaws. Splatoon as a series has had a really poor track record when it comes to the game's content at launch. Splatoon 1 back in 2015 had no ranked game modes, no private battles, no squad battles, just 5 maps and only 29 weapons at the game's launch. Splatoon 2 was a little bit better. It had private battles, it had the 3 ranked game modes from the previous game, and squad battles all present, but it only had around 45 weapons in 8 stages, 2 stages of which were returning from Splatoon 1. The rest of the weapons that were in Splatoon 1 that players had already played were then drip-fed back into the game through updates for months. Some people whose favorite weapons were something like the Range Blaster had to wait months for it to eventually get released back into Splatoon 2 when it had already been in Splatoon 1 for years at that point. The games are bare bones at launch given their history, and with an update strategy that kind of engages hardcore players but only entices newer ones as time goes on. It kind of works. There's a promise of content for a few years, but it really leaves a bad taste in people's mouths at the launch of the game, especially reviewers and casual fans. A lot of early reviews for Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2 all sort of have the same ring to them. It might be worth it after a few updates, but right now it's not enough content. Competitive players and diehards will probably be able to just shrug that off. They'll be able to play the game and don't really care. They know that the weapons that they want and the content that they're looking forward to will eventually get added to the game, and it's only a matter of time. But this strategy for updating kind of seems dated and whack already. The reason for the worry and the anxiety right now sort of calls back to that. Am I going to waste my money buying this game? I might get a game that isn't finished or isn't different enough to warrant paying a full price. It's not really the reality for every person, but it's prevalent in a lot of people's minds. If I wanted to play Xenoblade 3 or Splatoon 3, and I could only buy one of them on September 9th, would I buy the full, complete game with extra content coming down the pipe in Xenoblade 3? Or the maybe unfinished game that will eventually become a full experience in Splatoon 3? I don't know. The lack of a clear, distinct identity from its predecessors is also a cause for concern, as it makes Splatoon 3 seem like yet another half step instead of a full one, at least to some people. Is it? I don't really know. But I do know that the lack of large meat and potatoes type of information about the game has led a lot of people down this path of thinking. But right now, it's all speculation. So I'll give you my take on it. And to preface this, I am a Splatoon diehard fan. I played competitively in Splatoon 1 and 2, and I also intend to play competitively in 3 as well. I own both of the art books, a decent amount of the amiibo, and I have engaged in the online community for years now. I also have taken long breaks from the games and the series as a whole, sort of devolving back into a casual player and viewer of it. And I've also talked to a bunch of casual fans about the series too. The series has a ton of potential. Anyone who has played it for a decent amount of time will tell you that. It is so unbelievably unique. It's fun, lively, and it just oozes personality. Splatoon 3 seems to be satisfying its core audience by maintaining that and intermixing those core tenets with locale changes, new weapons, new subs, specials, maps, gear, and lore. But to its casual audience, the game seems to have fallen flat with its marketing and differentiation from its predecessor. Some are excited by more of the game that they already play and already like, and some are bored and want something more dramatic and new. I kind of like to compare it to another Nintendo franchise, Mario. Splatoon 3 is kind of seen right now as the Super Mario Galaxy 2 of the series. From what we know right now, it seems to be more of the same great game, but just new stuff in it to do and mess around with. The core game has not changed very much, but there's enough to excite some people. Some people, however, want a dramatic difference, like the difference between Galaxy 2 and a game like Super Mario Odyssey. Both, at their core, are 3D Mario games with tight controls, a decent amount to collect and do, and a colorful cast of characters and locations, but fundamentally, they're different games. Galaxy has confined individual levels with just a few objectives and stars each, while Odyssey has large, sprawling kingdoms that are packed full of tons of moons to collect, coins to grab, costumes to unlock, and movement options to utilize. They're similar at a glance, but very different when you look a little more critically. That difference is what some people want when it comes to Splatoon 3. A game that feels like Splatoon, but an evolution of the series, not an iteration. For some people, Splatoon seems to be meandering forward in its progression as a series, instead of hitting its stride and sprinting down the straightaway. That feeling, compounded with Nintendo's somewhat cluttered, haphazard social media marketing presence for the game, has left a bunch of its fans in this odd, worrisome state, wondering if one of their favorite series is going to knock their socks off or just blow a little air at their shoes. It's weird and uncomfortable, and I can't really think of a series that has had an issue like this in recent memory. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 got a ton of information released, constant tweets and updates about gameplay mechanics, and it showed off its wow factor almost instantly that differentiated it from its predecessors while still feeling like a Xenoblade game. And from what I can see and what I've played of it, they nailed it. But for right now, I'd say try not to panic. Splatoon 3 will probably have a direct and a Testfire. Trust me, I predicted both of them. Links in the description, shameless plug. But they will show us more of this game, and our opinions can become more solid as the more information comes out. As it stands, I think the game has suffered from an odd release that had to be swapped for Xenoblade 3, which sort of probably scrambled the marketing into a point where the easiest thing to do is kind of just drip feed random small stuff to at least make sure that fans were kind of engaged and not completely left dry as a bone. But hopefully now that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has released and August has begun, the Splatoon 3 marketing campaign will begin in full force, and we'll all have to eat our words. We just have to wait and see though, so please take a deep breath, realize it is okay to be impatient about this, but it's a little bit annoying, but the game will come, so let's all just enjoy the quiet before the storm. I hope you liked this video. If you did, obliterate that like button and demolish subscribe. I will be making a lot of Splatoon 3 content when the game launches, as well as some content about other games sometime in the future. And I do want to hear from you down in the comments what you think about this. If you want to stay up to date on video releases and other shenanigans I get up to as well, follow me on Twitter @Jex4. And as always, I'm Jex. Have a good one.